So thank you, everyone. My talk's a bit different again. To actually really great talk just from Fanny as well. So some of my labs, so Claire Steele King, a member of my lab that's in the blue line there, one of my electron microscopies, actually led our lab drive towards greening the lab itself, to which we got, I think, platinum status last time around. And actually, the inventory was one of our biggest wins because then when we wanted to find a chemical, A, we knew where to find it. And when my staff tell me we don't actually have that chemical, and I've got a recollection from 20 years ago we could find it. And so we saved time to buy it again. So that's super cool. Anyway, thank you. I'm here to talk about the finances, the money side of things, but I always give credits and some acknowledgements up front. So in blue are my core facility staff. And so that's the core staff themselves. And you can see the EM staff. So I've got Paul Gunning primarily, Claire Steele King primarily, Karen Hodgkin. So they're my three leads, but there is actually a few others that can do some basic stuff as well. And then below that, I've got in black is the R&D team, of which Ian Morrison was my electron microscopy postdoc that's still around in the lab. Actually, I don't just run one lab, which is that side. I also run all the core facilities in the life science side, so I have an oversight of all the other labs as well. This was us in the beginning. I will skip over that before you find me in that picture. Back in 2002. This is us today. Actually, this was us a few years ago. We are now significantly bigger than that today. And we are essentially our microscopy core and all the cores serve quite a diverse user base. Everything from the cancer research users to, we've got quite a lot of infectious users. They're the immunologists. We've got some users that bug us on a daily basis. They'd be the microbiologists. Get it? Bug us, microbiologists. Oh, come on. Come on, that's not bad. It's the end of the day in the UK. I've got to say, they're also our yeast scientists, so full of budding scientists as well. But plant biologists, cell and developmental biochemists, all of these groups are using the microscopes. And so actually we have to choose and look at a diverse set of equipment. And it's not just that. We've got users for our electron microscopes coming from chemistry, coming from physics, coming from archaeology, coming from the environment. So really a broad church. And from other institutes globally, including from the US, Canada, from Asia, Middle East, all coming to York to use the equipment, and many commercial clients also coming to use the facility. And this is important because this is part of the financial sustainability that we're able to achieve at York. Critically, 23 years on, we're now 31 team members. 10 of those are in the imaging and cytometry lab. So that lab is the sort of the driving force of the facility overall. We underpin over £45 million worth of grant funding. So that's around $60 million worth of grant funding. Just 80 within biology alone, excluding those in the other departments and so forth. And because this is really about making the money work and how we make it sustainable, we actually I've just seen our end of year forecast. So the budgets came through this morning. We will cost £2.3 million this financial year. And we are due, if we carry on as we are at the moment, we will recover £2.3 million this financial year. However, my budget isn't to achieve 100%. It's actually to recover around 80%. So this isn't, it is being recorded. I have to be careful what I say now. We were going to be quite slow in putting some of those costs across in the next couple of months. Our financial year ends in July. So actually we will make sure that we don't recover 100% to help next year's finances to smooth that out. Because we know next year for university is going to be very challenging. Now I know quite a few of you are actually on this call, and some of you I think were on Monday ago, a town hall meeting about making the facilities more financially sustainable, especially in the US where there's quite big changes occurring. But even in the UK, we are seeing the University of York making 10% budget cuts. So it's not unique at all. But whilst the university has made 10% budget cuts, our facility has grown over that time. And importantly, the facility is acknowledged at the very highest levels. So Charlie Jeffrey is our Vice Chancellor, and our universities are also given block funding, not just grant funding, but some block funding for how well it does in its research excellence. So it's judged on its research excellence. And one of the biggest improving categories was through the facilities. And the technology facility is the biggest facility on campus. In fact, it is twice as big It's as big as all the other facilities put together across campus. And our local head of department also pointed out that the facility really helped the department as well. And Sir Paul Nurse, I don't know who knows Paul Nurse. He's about to be president of the Royal Society for the second time, the only person ever to have been done that second time. He visited the facility recently, for which he commented that the facility is the best he has seen outside of the CRIC, which is our National Institute for Biological Research, and exactly how all universities should be running their facilities. I disagreed with him on two aspects. Firstly, we're better than the CRIC. Who's on the CRIC from here? Oh, crap. Anyway, and I'd say it's how every research intensive university can run. And that is slightly different if it's research intensive versus non-research intensive. I do joke about the CRIC being better than the CRIC, but I would say we may be better added value per pound spent, and I'll explain why near the end. So this was us back in 2002. We were just a small lab, just a few instruments. This is us now in 2025. You can see we were a lot larger with very close connections with companies. The companies with logos are companies that we consult with, alpha, beta, and demo site for. So we have very close collaborations. And indeed, we're still evolving. The Nikon spinning disc is installed this week. So although we work with Zeiss, we're not exclusive. Just before that was the Zeiss Gemini 460, which is just about to be signed off. We've got the Lumix C-Trap and other flow cytometers. So you can see it's quite a diverse set of equipment just in my own lab in the last couple of years. And we have done a lot of development with these companies. But the metrics, the important bit. And when we think about valuing and the value of our facility, these are the different outputs that we could possibly measure. And there's quite a lot of different impacts. This is what our facility is really worth to the university. It's not just about the money. It's about supporting users. It's about the university's reputation. It's about the influence of the university. It's about who we train, the publications that we enable our users to actually achieve. So there's all these different metrics to look at. But at York, for the facility, probably the number one, the most important metric, especially when finances are hard, is the finances. However, some academics will frown at that because, oh, it shouldn't be about the money, it should be about the science. But the more users we have, the more scientific impact we are delivering. And the more scientific impact we're delivering, the more income we are receiving through that extra use. So actually, I'd say finances are a very crude, but probably the best way of measuring how well appreciated the core facility is actually delivering. And I would also say that not all facilities are going to be equal. It cannot be equal. You'll have some facilities. Imagine you've got your electron microscope doing volume electron microscopy. It's going to be used all hours of the day doing lot one experiment, or just an experiment for one or two groups, frequently for months. So that's really efficient on hourly usage. But actually, if you've got a more standard TEM, you could be having 5 different users setting their samples on there, getting their quick results and off it again. So now per hour, it's more expensive, but maybe which is the highest impact? The one with 5 experiments or the one with the really prolonged? It's how you measure it is really difficult. So that's why you cannot compare directly one facility to another. So this is my lab budget. The income, the deficit, so we're recovering over 80%. Last year we were actually 97%, and this year we're recovering at the moment, tuning in at 102%. By the end of the financial year, with a few pauses, we'll be at 96% cost recovery. But how do we do that? So actually, this is a publication. So you heard Erin talk earlier about the journal Microscopy had a special edition around core facilities. And actually, one of those articles was one on how to do full cost recovery within a core facility. So this is the reference, the QR code here. I think I have it right at the end of the talk as well, in case you haven't quickly got that at this point. But before we do that, this is an all-inclusive model, and it doesn't matter who your funder is. You can take what we're about to talk about, and you can just delete bits. Okay, it's common across the world how finances are run. There's no magic in this. There's no, oh, it's different in the EU compared to the UK. It's really not. Actually, the costs are exactly the same, The difference is in what we are allowed to include in our costs. And we just have to delete bits that are not allowed to be included at different areas. So I would give us an extra thank here to Nicole White, who actually helped put some of these slides together, certainly on this slide, who had the US interface. And we gave this talk with the US side and a UK side. So when looking at the costs, there's the direct costs that we see on a daily basis. That's our staff salaries, the consumables related with keeping the equipment running, the service contracts, don't we know about those? And the cost for training. And when I say training, I mean training our own staff, the facility staff. That's all the direct costs. But then you've got stuff we don't really think about, the overheads. So that's all the staff above us and aside to us. So the HR, the legal team, the procurement teams that are looking, the legal teams that are all looking after us in the background, that actually we have a responsibility for recovering some of their costs as well. The utilities, so the water, the electric, and so forth, and just the estate charges, the room space, the depreciation, having to be repainted, new doors being put in to help for accessibility, things like that. And then the depreciation in the UK, for some funders, not all, we have to include the depreciation costs of the system itself. So if we break this down, this is what it would look like. We have the service contract costs. Okay, this is quite easy. We get an annual fee, so we know exactly what that cost is related to that instrument. But then we have the consumables. So actually this is for a flow cytometer in this case. We have tubes, we have cleaning solutions, we have reagents, we have QA beads, we have the autoclave, all the cleanup costs associated with it, the gloves, the lab coats, the ethanol, the bleach, the detergents, all these things are consumables that instrument will be requiring in the background. Then the staff, and this is where people get confused. This isn't staff to run the instrument for a user. This is the background staff time to QA the instrument to make sure it's running to spec, for helping set it up in the background, for troubleshooting it, for liaising with engineers when it's being fixed, for ordering the parts. This is the background staff time that's actually never really recorded, but is in there because we have to be doing it to keep things maintained. So that's the background staff time. So it is the percentage of time spent on that. So say running the QA tests, cleaning and maintaining them, troubleshooting, because we don't charge users for troubleshooting or troubleshooting the instrument. If it's got a quirk, we'll then do new tests to test if it's the instrument or the sample. This is background staff time. Talking to the engineers, I don't mean having coffee with them, having cake with them, that's in our coffee breaks, but actually liaising and explaining what is wrong and helping evidence what is wrong with it. Ordering the consumables, the parts, actually the procurement of the instruments is also critical for this. And then the training and consulting thing. But remember, your staff do not work 52 weeks a year. They go on holiday. They have sick time. So you have to work up their uptime on the instruments, which is roughly 42 weeks a year, is how much time, and that pro rata percentage then goes to that cost that's at the top there. So remember that. So the instrument may be available 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, but the staff, the background staff time, are not divided by that unit because it's when they are available. Then there's depreciation. Well, this is obvious itself, I think. It depends on the lifespan that you are going to use for your prediction, which can be anything from 5 to 15. My old electron microscope, my Techni G12, was 23 years old before we had to retire it due to an incident on it. And the indirects, and this is where you need your central university to tell you what those indirect cost rates are, because every metre squared within our institute will actually have a charge placed against it, depending if it's lab space or office space. Every university will know its cost. And that will include the depreciation, the cleaners, the admin staff. Again, these are all things we don't necessarily take into granted, but is being used in that space. And the gas, electricity, water, and so forth. And that, if you add all those up, that will give us the total cost, annual cost of what that instrument costs to run and maintain. The next critical point is how much we are going to use the instrument. And in the UK, we use the average of how much it gets used. So actually, how much is it being used? We don't use a 9 to 5, 50 weeks of the year some, because that is not sensible. That is not what happens with any instrument. So we actually use the number of units used last year to predict this year's. I would just say here, this is important. Pragmatism. Letter of the law for our funder is you use last year's figures. Some universities will say, no, 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 you have to use efficient use. You don't if you read the rules. Efficient use can be, well, do you know what? A user can't get to it until they've prepped their sample. So it's not available when they're prepping a sample. So you can manipulate that efficient usage. But in York, we use a rolling 3-year average for the number of units to divide per year. The reason we use a rolling average is to take out those peaks and troughs that quite often occur, and it stabilizes it across. Okay, so we can use last year's figures, a rolling average of figures, which is what we're using, so forth. And that gives us our cost per hour. We just divide that cost by those number of hours, and that gives us our total hourly rate or run rate, or whatever the unit is you're dividing it by. It could be a day rate, a half day rate, a run rate, whatever you're charging for. Okay, so that gives us our £50 an hour. But do you know what? Sometimes that can become prohibitive. If you've got a mega user that's coming on and going to blow your numbers out of the water, you can then, using your funding body rules, start to look at other possibilities and other classes of users. Okay, so actually our rates for our charities cannot include depreciation, which actually makes a big difference to the overall cost. In reality, depreciation and indirect costs doubles to trebles the hourly rate of many systems. So actually our charities do not allow us to include this, whereas our government funders do allow us to include that. So we have to pick and mix off that Excel sheet at the end what we include for those different rates. And obviously for industry, we have to charge at least break even, but we should really be charging an uplift. I've never bought it. Well, okay, you seldom buy a microscope without the company making a profit, and that's business. But importantly, if you actually charge less than what it truly costs to run the system, you can be accused of state subsidizing a company and being anti-competition using government funds. So you have to be super careful of making sure you are charging industry the true rate. But just flicking on from that, just looking at the time, you know, if you've got these right, because if your running costs and your fees charged at the end of the year balance each other out, so you are cost neutral, you have set your rates effectively. If you are running at a deficit, something is going wrong somewhere, and that could be because you have more student users that you have to use for free or something, and that's fine because you understand why or where the loss is being made. If you're making a profit and you don't have any commercial users, you are overcharging, and your auditor will not be too happy because we are not there we cannot profit off government and charity funding. Okay, so we need to make sure that this does balance out sensibly and then reflect and modify the next year to get it where you need it to be. It doesn't have to be equal. So in our case, we charge per hour. Okay, some units will cap out. So if you're doing an overnight experiment, you may only charge for the first 6 or 8 hours and the rest are free in that 24-hour period. We actually allow annual subscriptions where people give us a fixed amount on our estimated efficient use for them, because actually they use less training, they need less troubleshooting, they're less time on us, and it gives them a more sensible and reduced cost where they're using lots and lots and lots of time. Actually, it still breaks even if you do it right. And actually our government funder now insists we do a subscription type model by where they're awarded, the user is awarded the money that is given directly to us. So we cannot charge them more or less at that point. And who pays? I like this question. Who pays? Controversially, I'd say everyone pays, even my own PhDs, but no one pays. The reason no one pays, and this is a big comms we put to our users, they are not paying personally to use our electron microscopes. It's the funder who's paying to use the electron microscope themselves. So that's a really good tip, a good one to sell. That it doesn't matter if it looks expensive. If they put the right cost in the grants, they will have the money to use it. But I showed this earlier. This is just my lab alone. But I am not alone in the department. In fact, microscopy feeds into genomics, it feeds into proteomics, metabolomics, biochemical data. If I look at these publications in the last year or two, they have all used multiple core facilities at the same time. Yet we quite often think of ourselves in isolation, whereas what we've done at York now is think of ourselves as a team. And as a team, you can see the individual budgets. Some years, someone's really high, whilst others are low. So labs are there's only so much money in the system. So we can't all be going up at the same time. If they're using one lab more than the other one's going to be used less. But we can look at that as a sum of facilities. So now we're working as a team. And since we've started doing that and collectively across, we've actually improved our efficiency. So we are now, even though we cost more, our net has actually gone down. So we're now at break-even cost for the last 2 years. Okay, so that's as a collective set of labs. And so now, instead of being these separate bunch of labs, we are far more joined together and working more fluidly between them. But one model doesn't fit all. This is just a cost model. If you are at a centrally funded institute, you probably cannot charge your internal users because you're essentially just charging the same institute to access. But there's pros and cons to each method. I am a big advocate for the fee for service in academia, because certainly in the UK, if an academic underperforms, they don't generally lose their job. In an institute, they are generally reviewed every 5 years, 3 or 5 years, and if they're underperforming, they will lose their job. So they are efficient in the science that they do on our systems and our microscopes. In the universities that we have in the UK, if it was free at the point of access, actually, I think the next slide might say this. If it was free at the point of access in the department, quite a lot of inefficient, low-impacting academics would use the instruments far more frequently. But that would decrease the access for the well-funded, high-impact research groups. The problem then, my staff, I know, would go off. I wish I could see who's on the call, so I've lost that capability. Darn it. Because I know that my users, my staff, would then start to do more work around the science that interests them most, not necessarily the ones that have got the money to be used. So it changes the ethos, which actually means that the high impacting scientists may get less time, so the research impact will drop. If the research impact drops because they are not publishing as quickly because they can't get to publication because it's being blocked by non-paying users that are not impactful, the income drops, the ref impact drops, and our ranking for ref, which I brought up at the very start, will also drop. So actually by charging, it's made a big difference to our efficiency and to the ref impact, and making sure that those who need priority access get it because they have grant funds and it's been assessed by experts on their grant panels. We are there to them to make sure they are well serviced at that point. But just to add, it's not just merging labs that makes us more resilient. The staff themselves are multifaceted. In the bowls, you can see who's got electron microscopy expertise, but you'll see that Paul Gunning can also do light microscopy. Karen Hodgkinson, oh my goodness, Karen Hodgkinson can do cell sorting. She can prep, run the TEM, run the SEM, she can ultramicrotome, the works. Claire Steele-King can do confocal and EM. Grant Calder is now doing EM and the super resolution light microscopy. So you can see how the staff are now increasing the number of electron microscopists I have at any one day. I could have 4 electron microscopy staff, and yet on another day I may only have 1 because they're needed over on the light microscopy side. So it really adds a lot of resilience to the team. And that diversity of team also brings different biological backgrounds, helping us speak different languages. So really, by coming together, it's helped, but not just in one lab, but across the different platforms. And actually, this is quite nice to show this. This is my genomics lab. using my microscopes. Always freaks me out when I see them in my lab, but they are now capable. I have my lab in the mass spec lab, so we can understand the pipelines and work hand in hand with the mass spec team. And all the facilities are really well integrated and come together on a weekly basis and a monthly basis to really help develop and increase the impact of the publications to our end users. So finally, what this has enabled us is the number of acknowledgements and co-authorships have gone up significantly at this point. And I'll put in the chat now, I hope, some global guidelines from Global Bioimaging of how to encourage authorship recognition, whether it be from acknowledgements or co-authorships. And we are now running this year at 68% co-authorships with our facilities, which I think is really good as the academics appreciate the expertise and the inputs they put into it. And finally, a quick blatant advertisement. This is a picture of York. York is amazing. It is the best city in the country. Better than London, trust me. It's got more history than it can shake a stick at. Romans to Vikings to medieval streets. So come on some of our courses. And pertinent for this, the Royal Microscopical Society, I should be able to say that. I'm president of the darn thing. Also runs a facility management course, which actually I know one or two of you on this call have been to. And they run facility meetings, which this is a key bit here. On a week, Monday ago, we had a town hall meeting, an open forum about these sort of metrics, how to defend your core, how to build it, how to make it more robust for what's happening in the current climate. It wasn't to complain about the current climate. We just have to deal with it. And it was a super positive meeting. Over 270 people actually attended the meeting with over 300 registered from over 25 different countries, with actually the majority being from the US. And it was a really healthy meeting. And what I'm going to hopefully do is set a similar meeting up again, but then talking about facilities, about not electron microscopy, not light, not flow, but about the day business of running a core facility. The finances, the staff, the training, as we've heard today, the green impact, enabling better accessibility, all these things will be brought in to the lab, into that courses. And finally, if you've not seen my podcast, I have to say this. I can see Kedar Narayan's on here. Kedar's been one of the guests a couple of times, actually, of the microscopists. Erin's here. Erin's also a guest on the microscopists. So hopefully you'll have seen that. If not, please. And Richard Henderson. And oh gosh, so many different microscopists have been on this. And it's about them personally. And it's about what motivates them. It's not just about microscopy. Far from it. So hopefully you'll watch that. Some good ones with core facility staff as well. This is my big team, most of them. And I shall finally leave you on the link to that cost recovery for which a lot have mentioned now. And I've done it in time. Thank you.
Yeah, and you didn't get in trouble with Zoom too. Yeah. Okay, any questions? There is someone asking in the chat about if your core involved in teaching.
Yeah,
and
so
how do you
Natalie,
count for that?
yeah, I've got that. So thanks, Natalie, for the question. We do very little undergraduate teaching. We do postgraduate teaching, but we run postgraduate sort of courses to learn how to use the microscopes. We will charge a small fee for that to make it justifiable. We do most of our teaching is one-to-one. We do not do undergraduate teaching. If we did, that would just be in that background time. And most cores will not break even. But we can actually keep account for how much time we spent on other activities and put a cost to that. So when we report back at the end of the year, we can say, but these are all the other bits, and this is how much it's cost us doing things such as teaching or outreach activities and other elements. Alice.
Very good topic.
Thank you.
Well, question for you is, I saw it's very impressive. You get your core staff, multiple head on one person. As you know that with the core facility, and if you have a large amount of different lab microscopy, for example, and the EM and the flow cytometry, all different kind, and even with a limited number of people operating the 7 different microscope, light microscope is already difficult for them to learn each other. Then they can do EM, flow, and light microscopy all together. How you do that?
Yeah, so they are not all expert in all of them, you know. But this is my question back. How many PhD students can run a confocal microscope and run a transmission electron microscope of their samples? They may not be able to do on the background sample prep for EM, but they can operate the transmission electron microscope, they can run the confocal microscope, they can go off and run a sequencer upstairs. This is our PhD students who they're doing that within 6 months. So actually, it's getting them to be able to do the basics. So when someone's on holiday, someone can still come and do some basic troubleshooting. They can't necessarily do the experimental design or the analysis. That's where people's expertise fits in. But actually, the fundamentals, it's not so hard. You know, most of my staff are PhD or PhD. Actually, some of my senior staff don't have PhDs, but they are far equivalent and beyond that level. They really are up at super expert levels. So yeah, I think it is very achievable where there's a will and where the environment enables it. And
Another
luckily,
follow-up question is what is the composition of your team? Like how many PhD versus the master or bachelor, in which kind of combination you organize the whole team?
oh, did you say how many PhDs, how many non-PhDs?
Yeah,
Oh gosh, do you know what? I don't know if I've added that up.
just want to get
Possibly 50-50. But I'll very quickly say that some of those without PhDs can be more senior than those with PhDs because they have the expertise.
Right.
So it's not on their qualifications. I really must stress that. Qualifications are actually my latest flow expert that's come in doesn't have a PhD.
Exactly.
Because they are just super expert at it and super geeked at it. So yeah, qualifications are very secondary.
Okay, so I think we need to move on. I know there's another chat. I think called facility management. It's a big issue, and
Yeah.
every institute has different. Yeah,
Richard, can
go
I just say
ahead.
one more thing that I forgot to mention? Actually, our electron microscopes, because some are used a lot more than others, the different rates between them can be quite significant. So what we've done is put the electron microscopes as a bundled set of instruments. So it's just electron microscope. And then the prices are the same. And then people use the system that is best for them rather than the cheapest or the newest, because that's generally the cheapest. So we bundle systems together as a collective. And that's been a good pragmatic solution for stopping these differentials across niche instruments versus workhorse instruments. Sorry.